All right, we're live. I think we are live on Facebook and YouTube. We didn't announce it, so I don't know, Trent. It might just end up being you and I sitting here talking to ourselves, which it normally is that way anyway, so I'm totally fine with that. But I don't know, man. It feels a little bit weird that we're going to be back in the big house tomorrow watching football. It crept up on us pretty quick. Are you excited to be back in the? For those who don't know, for those who don't tune in, I know we haven't done a show in a while. Trent Noop lives in the state of Ohio. He is an Ohio resident. So in order for Trent to get up to here to Ann Arbor, he's got to make what, a 2.5 hour drive to get to the big house?
2 hours and 15 minutes. So it's not as bad. 2.5 hours, of course.
Yeah. So 2 hours up to the big house, but you get to be back in Ann Arbor tomorrow. I'm excited for it. Trent, you get to be back up in the press box, eating all the goodies, drinking all the soda pop they have up there. I mean, what is
actually last spring game, all they had was like water and chips. So it wasn't like an actual game where you'd have all this food to choose from. They had chips and water.
Oh, well, that's not nearly as exciting. I mean, dude, I guess you get a little spoiled after a while of doing it, but to me, that's like one of the biggest benefits of being up in the press box is A, you get to be nice and warm. B, you get like, I don't know, rack of ribs up there, and you get maybe a little glass of Chardonnay up there and whatever drinks you want, snacks. I mean, it's pretty plush up there.
Yeah, the prime rib day is it's phenomenal.
But there is going to be football tomorrow, and obviously we're excited about that, man. There's a lot of, I think, intrigue with this team coming off of. Good to see you, MMB, by the way. Tyler, good to see you. CJ, yes, great to see you. Bradley, what's up, man? Great to have you here. Look, man, a lot of people are going to be excited about the spring game, and unfortunately, if you're not making the trip to Ann Arbor, you're going to have to wait about a week or so before it airs. They're not going to air it live. I don't know when the exact date is. We'll go in and we'll figure that out. April 27th. So what? Yeah. They want to wait until the spring portal window closes, right? I mean, I guess let's just start there before we get into the game itself. I mean, Trent, Sharon Moore talked about it a little bit. He said that he had no intention of ever canceling the spring game for as long as he's the head coach, but we've seen that happening across college football. We know, it kind of started, I think, with Nebraska, and then some other programs started doing the same thing. Do you have any issue with Michigan not airing it live? Do you think it's a good move? How worried are you about, having a potential, losses as a result of what some other scout might see during the spring game?
Well, I think tampering is going to happen whether you have a spring game like Michigan or you're like Nebraska and you're Matt Rule and you're like, no, we can't do that, because tampering is going to happen. You're going to have your agents calling other schools, be like, hey, he's not playing on this team. What are you going to offer? What are you going to offer him? And it's always going to happen until some sort of NCAA regulation happens. And like, who knows when that actually goes into place, but no, I love it. Honestly, I think Sharon Moore might be onto something, though. Don't air it until after the portal closes. Then anybody that wants to watch it can, just in case you have a little more tampering that happens during it. If let's just say your third string wide receiver tears it up and here comes Colin Georgia, maybe it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's just, dude, it is such a weird phase of college football that we're in, and I'm not going to go into the transfer portal NIL stuff, but the numbers that are being thrown around, when I said I think about a week ago or so that I wasn't a fan of where college football is at in terms of the transfer portal and NIL as it stands currently. It's not that I don't want guys to get paid, and it's not that I don't want players to have the opportunity to go elsewhere if they think that there's going to be a better fit, but dude, it just feels like the wild west out there. Like, it feels like you've got guys that are signing to stay with a school, like signing a contract for like $1 million NIL deal. And then somebody else comes in with like a $3 million deal. And then they just void the contract out. And this guy transfers, a guy that you thought was coming back. And so if you're a head coach, whether it's college basketball, college football, I don't know how you navigate these waters, particularly if you're a school that has talent and you don't really have a ton of NIL support. Like, you're going to have these other big programs that are pecking away at your roster consistently. And we see it with Michigan basketball, right? Like, we're starting to see it last year. The entire starting lineup was essentially built up of transfers. And now this upcoming season, guess what? It's going to be a whole new crop of guys. And so I saw somebody say it on social media, but it's almost like it's going to be easier to happen with basketball than with college football. But like, from year to year, like, you don't really have that consistency where the fans, like, you're not going to go out and buy a jersey of a player, at least on the basketball team, because next year he probably won't even be on the roster. Right. There's just so much turnover. And so when it comes to the spring game, I think if you're Sharon Moore, like, yeah, you want to have the spring game. And we talked about it before. It's a great annual event for families to come to, right? Because it's free. You get to bring the whole family. And it's not often that a lot of people can afford to drop $200 a ticket to bring a family of four to like a premier game at the Big House. And so I'm glad that they're going to keep that tradition, but the fact that they're going to delay it for a week or so, or whenever it is they're going to air it, I think it really speaks to the concern around college football that you've got to protect what's yours. And if it means canceling, cancel it. If it means, air it a week later, air it a week later. But yeah, man, I mean, a third string wide receiver at Michigan shows out, has a great game. And you're right. Georgia could come calling, Miami could come calling. And that's where we're at right now with college football. So,
Chris, I don't know how much you
go ahead. You go.
I don't know how much you pay attention to the transfer portal and like everything that happens, but just to tell you about like today's day and age of the transfer portal, there was a Maryland defensive lineman who entered the portal, signed a contract with North Carolina today, and then 2 hours later got released from it and signed with Texas on the same day.
That's what it is. That was basically the same. I can't remember. I think it was a basketball player had re-signed to stay with maybe BYU, and then somebody else came in right after he signed the deal and offered him $3 million, and he ended up signing somewhere else. But that is what it is, man. Like, even when you sign a deal for $1 million as a college athlete, that's not even safe, because somebody else might come in and say, well, we want him for $2 million. And then who's going to enforce all of this stuff? It's just such a mess. And I think that I was thinking about this a little bit. If you're the NCAA, when you were going to, open up NIL and allow it to become a thing, I think everybody thought it was going to be a great thing. But if you're the NCAA, like, if you even attempted to put guardrails in, I'm sure the pushback would have been, see, you're trying to limit the players. You're not allowing them to fully test the market. And so I think, the NCAA, they allowed NIL to take place. There's no guardrails in place now. And it's just some of the weird things that are happening and the amount of money that we're talking about. Dude, the Michigan basketball program, this is insane to me. There was an analytic company out there, and it was based on market value and what some of these transfers are commanding. But they estimated that Michigan spent anywhere from $8 to $10 million in the transfer portal this offseason. $8 to $10 million. Trent, how many players has Michigan brought in for the basketball team out of the portal? 4 guys. So do the math, $8 to $10 million estimate. And I mean, even, factor in a margin for error there. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars being forked out to get guys out of the transfer portal. We've talked about this the last time we were on the show, man. This feels unsustainable. It feels like there is going to be some sort of massive change coming to college athletics. And I know that revenue share is going to play a role in all of this in the near future, but dude, like I said, if you're a college football coach or a college basketball coach, unless you have a treasure chest of NIL funds just waiting at your disposal, I don't know how you navigate these waters. You see it with a program like Maryland in the Big Ten, their basketball program. They lost everybody to the portal, or guys ran out of eligibility. They hire a new head coach, Buzz Williams from Texas A&M. He comes in and he's got to rebuild that entire roster, and he's got to do it in one offseason. And he's looking at the transfer portal, and that's his only option at this point. And so it is insane. But damn, see, we got off on that tangent, spending almost 10 minutes talking about the game being delayed. Let's talk about the actual football game itself tomorrow, Trent. You can learn a lot from the spring game. Pretty much what you see in the spring game is what you can count on in the fall. I'm kidding, of course, but there is going to be, I think, quite a bit of information we can learn about this team. I know that obviously all eyes are going to be on the quarterbacks, primarily Bryce Underwood. You've seen the videos coming out. You hear the hype, from his whether it be from the teammates, from the coaches. He looks and sounds as good as advertised. Tomorrow, Michigan fans, at least if you're in the big house, you're going to get your first look at him. Trent, maybe let's start there because Bryce Underwood is going to be the primary focus. I mean, what are you wanting to see out of the true freshman quarterback when you get into the big house tomorrow?
Well, I mean, it's going to be, even though it's not a real game, it's a game type atmosphere in front of fans. So I'm curious to see what he looks like in a live game action. Like his timing with his receivers. What does that look like? What does it look like for Bryce Underwood to throw a football? What does a spiral look like? All these little things that we really haven't gotten to see, we're going to see tomorrow. So what timing, what does he look like? Does he stay in the pocket? Granted, he's probably not allowed to get touched, but when he's under duress, like what does he do? And then kind of pivoting just a little bit here, Michigan only has 2 scholarship quarterbacks, 2 right now, because Mikey Keene's injured and so is Davis Warren. So what does Jaden Davis look like? Because to me, the grand scheme of it, depending on how long Keene is going to be out, Michigan might have to go look into the transfer portal to find some quarterback for depth. You have Chase Herbstreit coming in. He's not on campus yet. But if Jaden Davis has taken that step forward, like coaches and teammates have talked about all spring, maybe Michigan doesn't have to go into the portal and find somebody, because maybe Jaden Davis has gotten decent enough, or he could be a number 2 or number 3 if Mikey Keene is healthy. Jaden Davis has always had that mechanic issue, and watching some videos, it looks like he still has a little bit of a wind up, but let's see how much improved he is in the spring game.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, you know what you talk about with Bryce Underwood, obviously, yeah, you want to see how comfortable does he look out there? Does he pick up right where he left off at Belleville? Is he slinging the rock? Is there a tight spiral on it? Is he putting the ball where it needs to be? And I mean, dude, you look at some of the videos coming out of spring ball, and it looks like he's good at putting the ball on target. Now you get into the big house, and it's a different environment, and we'll see if that can carry over. But yeah, man. I mean, what's the decision making look like? Is he getting it out on time? What's the mobility look like? Yeah, he can't take contact, but can he move around in the pocket? Can he create with his legs? We obviously saw that in high school. So those are the things that I'm just going to want to see from him on Saturday. But, you're right when it comes to Jaden Davis and where he fits in the mold and, what Mikey Keene is working through. Although Sharon Moore did indicate recently that Mikey Keene is back throwing this week. Now, I don't know what that means. Is he throwing in a t-shirt and shorts? Is he not suiting up? We don't really have the details there, but, going into this, we thought it was a 2-man battle between Mikey Keene and Bryce Underwood. And we thought that was going to be the battle that carried over through the spring and into the fall. But when you listen to how they're talking about Jaden Davis, now, is there a chance they're trying to gas him up, right? And encourage him? And, there might be some of that. I mean, we certainly heard quite a bit of that with Jim Harbaugh, right? Like, go back to Alex Orji. Like, Alex Orji was supposed to be the greatest kick returner in Michigan football history, according to Jim Harbaugh. And then Alex Orji never returned a kick in his entire career. But so there might be some of that.
Go to UNLV and take one to the house.
He might light it up out there. They seem to like what they have out there in Orgy. So we'll see. But when it comes to Jaden Davis, you're right. The mechanics that has been a thing since he got to the University of Michigan. And when you watch those videos, he does have a pretty big windup, and you just wonder what that looks like when you've got an actual defense bearing down on you and you bring the ball that far back and that far down. You just seem to put it at risk. But I think the other variable with Jaden Davis, if he is legitimately in the battle, there's 2. Like, A, is he a guy that is truly okay with playing a backup role? And if he plays a backup role to Bryce Underwood, don't you think that if that's the way that things are trending and it's going to play out, if you're Jaden Davis, like what's the value to sticking around at Michigan at that point? Like, if you can't win that job and you're Jaden Davis, if you let Bryce Underwood beat you out as a true freshman, guess what's going to happen as a sophomore? Guess what's going to happen during his junior year, right? So to me, this is like a pivotal time of the year for Jaden Davis, because to be quite honest, and I don't want to speculate about this stuff, but I would have to imagine if the writing is on the wall, they're going to have a conversation with Jaden and say, look, this is where things are trending. Like, do you want to take a look at the portal? So I don't even know that he's going to be on the roster going into the fall camp. How much stock do you put into that? Like, we seem to hear that it's a heated battle between those 2 guys, and they're talking about Jaden Davis a lot. But if you're Jaden Davis and things are trending the other way, like, what's the value in staying?
I mean, unless he just loves Michigan. He wants to get that Michigan degree. He's thinking about life after football. Like, I don't know. To me, that's the only reasonable explanation as to why he would want to stay there for 3 or 4 years and be behind Bryce Underwood is because he values being at the University of Michigan. He likes his coaches. He likes his teammates. Because yeah, I mean, let's just say it's very hard to believe that he's going to beat out Bryce Underwood. Very, very hard to believe it.
Right.
So you're talking about this kid. If he's not going to beat him out this year, he's not beating him out next year, barring an injury. So but I do think it speaks to Jaden Davis that he's still on the roster. Like he could have very easily opted to enter the transfer portal when it opened on Wednesday or whatever day it was, but he didn't. He's still on the team. He wants to go out there and play in the spring game. Heck, I mean, dude, Benjamin Hall talked to the media on Tuesday, talked about his role on the team, and then all of a sudden he enters the transfer portal first thing Wednesday morning. But Jane Davis did not. He's still on the roster. So, I mean, I don't know, because obviously if he wants to start somewhere, it's probably not Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. The fact that they didn't even give him any run as a true freshman, and I know that there was that rumor, there was an agreement in place. His parents didn't want him to play, yada, 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 whatever. I think that would have been fine had the wheels not completely come off in the quarterback room last year. But the fact that Michigan cycled through 3 quarterbacks, ultimately ended back up where they started, which was with Davis Warren. And to Davis Warren's credit, he played well down the stretch, right? He fixed a lot of those turnover issues that cost him the job early on in the season. But Michigan was struggling. They were desperate for a quarterback last year, and they would not go to Jaden Davis. And so to me, that said a lot about kind of where he was in his development. And I think Bryce Underwood coming in, even where he is as a true freshman, I find it just hard to believe that he's not, if not on par, a step or two ahead of where Jaden Davis is, even though Davis has had a year in the program. And then when you get Mikey Keene back, now you're going to have a veteran in the mix. You're going to have a guy that's thrown for over 8,000 yards, over 60 touchdowns in his collegiate career. I have a hard time figuring out where Jaden Davis fits into this equation. And so that's going to be something to keep your eye on. I don't think Michigan goes to the portal for a quarterback. You still do have Davis Warren there sort of working through something. You've got Mikey Keene there, and Mikey Keene came to Michigan because not only did he want to play at Michigan, but according to various reports, like he's got an interest in coaching, right? And you've seen it with Jack Tuttle now. I think Jack Tuttle's working with the wide receivers maybe, but he's helping out on Michigan's coaching staff. Obviously, you see what's happening with Grant Newsome, right? His career, he suffered an injury, and now he's the offensive line coach at the University of Michigan. And I think Mikey Keene is looking to take a similar career path. And so that obviously the quarterbacks, right? We get into the big house tomorrow. It's the first time we're going to be able to see them sling it around and, seeing what Bryce Underwood looks like, watching Jaden Davis and the mechanics. And we saw a little bit of it, last year during the spring game, but how much has he progressed? We're going to get to see that tomorrow. So moving away from the quarterbacks, Trent, what else do you think is something that you want to keep your eye on tomorrow? What is you're going to be looking around offense, defense? What are some of the things that are going to stick out to you?
Well, let's stick with the passing game. Michigan had the 131st ranked passing attack last season.
My goodness.
I mean, their backs were against the wall. You can really only go up from here. And early on, we're hearing about how much more Michigan's throwing the football and how Chip Lindsey's really given his receivers a chance to make plays. So which wide receivers step up? I mean, Samaj Morgan and Fred Moore both return. Kendrick Bell is back. They were kind of starters along with Morris last year, and he's no longer on the team. Those guys are obviously expected to take a larger role this year, but then you have Donovan McCauley, a 6'5" transfer from Indiana. Samaj Morgan called him a dog the other day when he was talking to the media, and it sounds like he's played really well so far. Jamar Browder, another big-bodied true freshman wide receiver.
Isn't he 6'6", something like that?
Yeah, he's like 6'5", I believe. And he's made some good plays. We saw a video the other day of him like a tip ball drill he came down with and in the end zone. Andrew Marsh is on campus. He was highly touted wide receiver. What does he look like? I'm very interested to see what this wide receiver core looks like on Saturday and who steps up. Now, with me saying that, Peyton O'Leary has had 2 fantastic spring games that hasn't exactly made it to the regular season. So you can't just take it and go with it, but you can definitely see which players are talented and the speed. Like Andrew Marsh, he's supposed to be extremely fast, right? So what does he look like out there? I'm really, really, really dying to see what these receivers look like.
Yeah, and it's interesting, man, because as you're running through that list, I don't know, you probably listed off 7 to 8 names there of guys that you wanted to see. And there's been this huge clamoring of a good chunk of the fan base saying, we need to go get a wide receiver. We need a wide receiver out of the portal. We need more receivers. We don't have any wide receivers. I just don't subscribe to that. I think Michigan has a ton of weapons at wide receiver. Now, a lot of them are unproven. A lot of them, they're pretty young. But again, unproven, young, not very productive last year. We talked about this on the last show. How much of that was a product of just Kirk Campbell and the type of offense they were running? And oh, by the way, you didn't really have a serviceable quarterback that could get the ball from point A to point B. So the other group that's going to suffer the most from that is going to be the wide receiver core. And so when you go through those names, when you talk about Frederick Moore and Samaj Morgan and Donovan McCulley and Browder and, who else? Who did I miss there? Andrew Marsh, right?
Marsh, yep.
I mean, dude, there are a lot of weapons. You're right. I think outside of quarterback, when you're looking at this offense, we know Michigan can run the ball. We know that that's their bread and butter. And I think the offensive line, that's going to take some time to gel, right? That's going to go into fall camp before you figure that out, and you got to find a rhythm there. And Sharon Moore has talked about that. But in terms of the wide receivers, I think they have plenty of talent at that spot. And that's what I want to see, is that chemistry between Underwood or Jaden Davis with the wide receiver core. Maybe see some of these guys be able to go out and high point the ball in the back corner of the end zone. Like we've seen a lot of bubble screens, jet sweeps, like that type of usage, quick slants with the wide receivers. How long has it been since the University of Michigan football program has had a guy that can line up out wide and you could throw the ball down the field and he can go down and high point it and snag it out of the air? Michigan hasn't had that in a long time. I mean,
Collins, maybe,
but they didn't even really utilize him that way.
They didn't. Nope.
You got to go back to like Braylon Edwards era, right? So they've got some guys in Browder and Donovan McCulley that I think can play that role. I would like to see, like when it comes to the wide receivers, I know they've got some quick guys that can make things happen in the open field, but I want to see, do they got some guys? And we heard the coaches talk about this. A lot of these guys played basketball, right? They've got size. They've got that basketball background. Ron Bellamy talked about this, where, the ball goes up, you're boxing out. It's your ball. So I want to see some of that from these guys tomorrow when it comes to the wide receivers. And I think if we can see some of that, yeah, how much of it's going to translate into the fall? You reference Peyton O'Leary, and I get that thing can happen, but if you get a guy that can high point the ball and snag it in coverage, like that will carry over to the fall. And I think they've got a couple guys that can do that. So for sure at wide receiver, there's going to be plenty of intrigue there. What else do you got as far as what you're going to be taking a look at?
Well, I mean, going to the offensive line, I'm definitely interested in that. With that being said, though, the spring game is a draft, right? So you're not going to get probably the best 5 offensive linemen playing with one another. The 5 starters probably aren't going to be on the same team. It's going to be a makeshift offensive line on both sides. However, I think the Michigan defensive line depth and starters are going to be really good this year. So how does Evan Link look at left tackle? How does Brady Norton look at left tackle or left guard? How does Giovanni El Hadi look at left guard? He's moving back to left guard, so he's probably going to play there for the spring game. Andrew Babalola, who's going to step up on the offensive line and assert themselves into the starting lineup? Because Grant Newsome said there's probably 6 or 7 guys right now who are battling for starting jobs. We know Andrew Sprague is going to be the right tackle. We know Greg Crippen is the center, probably El Hadi at left guard, but left tackle and right guard are kind of up in the air. So who goes out there and plays well enough during the spring game to get their name noticed?
Yeah. There's no question about that, man. And you make a great point with it being a draft that you're not going to see like a cohesive unit out there on offensive line. You're going to have a, kind of a mix and match and of different guys. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned Brady Norton. What he said at the press conference, like he really knows how to get the Michigan football fan base behind him, right? Referencing Ohio State being a part of the recruitment. Ohio State actually reached out to him first. The Cal Poly transfer reached out to him first. They showed interest, and then they kind of ghosted him. Michigan came in, showed interest, offered him, and then Ohio State came back to the table. And according to Brady Norton, his thoughts at that point were like, fuck those guys, right? Word for word is exactly what he said. He wanted to be a Michigan man. So yeah, he factors to be in the mix. You mentioned El Hadi's going to be back. Greg Crippen's going to be back. they've got a lot of guys that have some experience on the offensive line. And so it seemed like they struggled out of the gate last year, right? We saw a lot of pressure getting to Davis Warren, and that was rattling Davis Warren. It was forcing him to get rid of the ball quicker than he wanted to. Not necessarily the most mobile guy. Like, he can move around in the pocket and he can get outside and make things happen, but he's not a dual threat type athlete. So I think, having those guys back and some of the additions they've made in the transfer portal is going to help. So that's certainly something to keep your eye on tomorrow in the Big House. What does that offensive line look like? Who are some of those guys that are really showing out? Just a couple of quick fan things here. CJ Frazier from the Facebook page, he says, Chris, are you allowed to take pics and video like normal tomorrow? I at least want to see some highlights. Yes, CJ Frazier, I will be down on the field. I will be taking photos. I will be snapping video. So for anybody who doesn't get to see the game on Saturday, I will be putting up some content on the weekend just so that you guys can see what it looked like there. Try to get a lot of good pictures of Bryce Underwood. I'll probably take about 5,000 pictures of Bryce Underwood tomorrow, but try to get some good video of some things that happened. And, we'll see if I continue to do that in the fall. I'm kind of not sure if I want to do that this year. It's hard on my body, squatting down, bending my knees like that, my back, like there's a lot of muscles that hurt after these games. Ralph Lewis from the Facebook page, he says, too early to guess. Michigan passing game will be top 40 this year. Thoughts? What did you say they were last year, Trent? 131st?
131.
131st in the nation. Well, it's not too early to guess that they'll be better than that, Ralph. I mean, I think that's a pretty safe bet. I don't know, Trent. What do you think? Michigan passing game, top 40 in the country?
So for context, in 2023, with J.J. McCarthy, Michigan had the 82nd ranked passing offense, averaging 213 yards per game.
Okay. Well, how much does that change your thoughts on the top 40?
I get that they have a new Sharon Moore was the offensive coordinator in 2023. As much as Chip Lindsey, as much as they're talking about Michigan throwing the football this year, at the end of the day, Michigan's identity is running the football. And you have Jordan Marshall, you have Justice Haynes coming in from Alabama. You hopefully have an improved offensive line. They're going to keep running the football. You have a probable true freshman starting. While I think Bryce Underwood could end up being the best quarterback Michigan has ever had before it's all said and done, he is a true freshman. I don't think you're going to see a top 40 passing attack in today's college football. You're talking about.
Oh, wow. So look at that. Trent already shitting on the Michigan passing attack. In spring, doesn't even think they can crack top 40.
They're going to have to average probably 270 yards to get in.
Can you pull it up? Last year, what was the 40th ranked passing offense? What were they averaging?
In 2024, it was Toledo, 254.2.
I mean, that seems doable.
Doable, but not if you run the football 30, 40 times a game.
Also true. Yeah, that's that. And look, going back to Bryce Underwood, when he talked about, Michigan and development of quarterbacks, like, you got to believe that those statistics were on his mind, right? So I was looking at LSU and kind of what Joe Burrow was doing. I want to go down and throw for 500 yards. Like, if I'm Bryce Underwood, that's what I want to do. How does that work in this offense, man? That's, Chip Lindsey isn't going to show his entire hand tomorrow. We get that, but we will get some sort of sense of, I guess, what the offense looks like and how much they're going to let the quarterback sling it around. And, will Michigan be top 40 this year? I don't know, going from 131 to top 40, even with the addition of Bryce Underwood and some other, supplemental pieces that they've added in, that seems like a big leap, but I wouldn't be shocked to see them crack, I don't know, top
60.
50.
I'll go 60. 231.1 last year was 60th.
So you're comfortable right now, as of now, top 60. I think I would move it up 10 spots. I think Michigan can find itself in the top 50 in the passing attack, but that is going to be something to definitely keep your eye on because they have weapons now, right? They've got a solid, experienced offensive line. They've got their guy at quarterback, a franchise guy, a guy who many people view as a, future first-round draft pick, and they've got some weapons at wideout. And so it sounds like Chip Lindsey in the house, they want to try to utilize that a little more, find a little more balance and some more explosiveness through the air, which we did not see at all in 2024. And I think if they can find that, I think that they can get themselves in the top 50, maybe even, Ralph, maybe in the top 40, which is not asking a lot. 254 yards a game, right? Through the air.
Yeah. That's what it is.
That's not a ton. That's not a ton, Trent. Okay, so we talked about the offensive line. We know that there's some stuff to keep an eye on there. One more question here from Scott Patton from the Facebook page. Good to see you. Looking forward to see you at the big house tomorrow. He asks, is it Chardonnay or Pinot Noir? It's Chardonnay. I'm a fancy boy tonight. It's been a while since I've had some wine on the show, but it's just a small glass of Chardonnay here on a Friday evening. CJ Frazier says he's got his Z8. He needs me to get him some credentials. Hey, look, if you're dropping money on a Z8, you don't need any help from me. I mean, that's pretty much cost you that about the same price as a car. So CJ, I think that you can get it figured out. Plus, you live in Iowa. You should try to get credentialed out there in the.
That's a fun offense to watch. You should get credentialed for Iowa games.
Go take some pictures of the punter out there at Kinnick. Lydia, she says, alive on Friday. Just saw the notification. Yes, Friday evening prime time. Isn't that crazy? But here we are trying to preview the spring game before we get back to the big house tomorrow. So, Trent, we've talked quarterbacks, we've talked wide receivers, we've talked offensive line. What else is it that you want to see in the big house tomorrow from this Michigan football team?
Chris, the last thing I put on my list was I want to see Shamari Earls. He did not play his senior year of high school due to an injury, so this will be his first real live action that he's had for a couple years. But this kid's rocking the number 2 jersey. He kind of looks like Will Johnson in stature. I want to see what the kid looks like. You have Jair Hill, you have Zeke Berry returning at probably starting at corner. But Michigan's got to have depth. They like to rotate guys. So who's that next man up? Because it could be you have Josiah Edmond, but then it could be Shamari Earls. This kid was recruited by Georgia. He was a South Carolina commit. I want to see what Shamari Earls looks like on Saturday against what we're being told a much more heavily passing Michigan team.
Yeah, I mean, and they've talked up Shamari Earls as a guy who's standing out early. I think it's tough when you're a true freshman trying to play in the secondary for sure, especially when you miss so much time with an injury your senior year of high school. But he certainly has the size, he certainly has the length and the athleticism. And look, man, I'm not sure how much they value that stuff still at Ann Arbor because we've seen certain guys. I mean, look, I don't want to bag. Look, I'm not going to use names. Just you can piece everything together. To me, if you're going to give a wide receiver the number 1, that guy should be like the guy at wide receiver, right? There's some tradition there with these numbers. We haven't seen that really they gave it to Roman Wilson, and I think he lived up to it. I think he did pretty well with it. Marion Walker wearing number 1 at the wideout. Not so much. Kakoa Crawford, not so much, right? So, tradition-wise, with Shamari Earls wearing the number 2, I mean, how much stock do you put into that? Do you think that let's say he was number 14, like, would you think differently of Shamari Earls if he was wearing a different number? Or do you think the number 2, potentially playing corner as a true freshman, we saw Will Johnson and what he did with that number? We know that Charles Woodson talked to Will Johnson, like they had a conversation about that number. Do you think that speaks to how highly they think of Earls?
Yes and no. I think that if you ask Michigan, you ask Sharon Moore, if he was on this podcast right now, I think that he would tell you, yeah, like the number 1, the number 2 jersey, it means a lot here in Michigan. Tradition. Then he'll go talking about Braylon Edwards and David Terrell and so on and so forth, these players who wore these numbers. But no, because I think that they've proven that they will give these numbers out to guys who aren't proven. I mean, just last year, there was a player wearing number 1 and he barely played offensively. So no, I don't think it means a whole lot. However, I think Shamari Earls is getting talked up for a reason. I think he's getting hyped up for a reason. And I think it's deserved. His stats, the stuff that how he's talked with the reporters coming out of high school. I think that he's going to be really good at Michigan.
Yeah, same. I mean, he's definitely somebody to keep your eye on. Another guy in the secondary that I want to keep my eye on is Jair Hill. I mean, he's moving into his junior year now. He got a lot of valuable reps last year. A little bit of a mystery there toward the end of the year. You're looking around for where's number 20. I can't find number 20. Oh, he changed his name to like 38 number to 38 or 36 or something like that. Not sure what happened down the stretch, but early on he was getting burned here and there, right? And he had to sort of take his licks and get the valuable reps in. But you also saw him make some big plays on the ball as well. And meeting with Lamar Morgan when he had his press conference recently, he talked about Jair Hill as a guy who's locked in this year. He knows it's his time. I think Lamar Morgan said that it's Jair Hill's time, and so that's a guy to really keep your eye on the corner. And then there's a lot of we've talked about this before, man. When it comes to that secondary, Michigan has a ton of options in the secondary. Throw Zeke Berry in there as well. We'll see what we're going to get with Rod Moore in terms of when he's going to be back, hopefully back and ready to go in the fall. But Michigan has a ton of guys and a ton of options in the secondary. A lot of guys that they brought in from the portal last year that are still here with the team that could factor into the rotation. And so, but at the corner position, yeah, Shamari Earls seeing what he's capable of, and then Jair Hill, what they're capable of. I mean, those two guys I'm really going to have my eyes on tomorrow. What else you got? One more thing, Trent, you're going to be watching for in the big house tomorrow.
Well, I'm curious how the transfers at defensive line looks, right? You have Damon Payne, you have Trey Williams. Both of them were former 5-star recruits. Granted, their career didn't turn out the way that they were hoping to at Alabama and Clemson, but these guys are veterans. They're big bodies. Michigan returns Rayshon Benny. I think that interior is going to be really nasty, and I want to see how these guys look. Again, they're going to be going up against a makeshift offensive line, but you hope to see them dominate, right? Especially being fifth-year guys. You want to see them take that next step here at Michigan.
Yeah, that defensive line, man, there are just, I mean, TJ Guy, Derek Moore, Rayshon Benny, Damon Payne, Trey Williams, like they have some guys up front. And then when you get to the second level at the linebackers, it's just as good. Ernest Hausman, Jay Sean Barham, Jimmy Rolder, Cole Sullivan, they bring in Troy Bowles from Georgia. Like, these guys are loaded defensively. And I think it was the same thing that we were saying last year. And then the defense came out a little bit shaky under the first year of Wink Martindale, right? I specifically remember saying that defense with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and Will Johnson, like, those guys are going to be good enough to keep Michigan in every game. But things looked a little bit shaky early on. I don't know that we're going to see it look as shaky early on this year because Wink Martindale is back. They've got some veteran guys who played a lot of ball up front. I just think it's going to look a little bit cleaner. Obviously, we're going to find out a lot about this Michigan team when they go to Norman week 2 and they play Oklahoma on the road. I get it. Oklahoma's not like what we were accustomed to Oklahoma being, under Lincoln Riley there for so many years. But that's a solid football team, and that's a really difficult place to go win a football game. So we're going to find out a lot about Michigan there. But yeah, man, that defensive line, Sharon Moore, credit to him, man. He did a hell of a job in going in and bringing in some key pieces. And then credit to Michigan in general for being able to keep guys in the fold like TJ Guy and Derek Moore and some of those veterans that are there. So really excited to see that. And honestly, I mentioned him, Jay Sean Barham, like, I want to see how they utilize him. Where is he lining up? What are some of the different things he's doing defensively? Because we've heard from Wink Martindale and Sharon Moore that they're going to move him around a little bit. I know they did that last year, but Jay Sean Barham is a guy that when you see him down on the field, right? Like, you look at pictures of him, he looks big, right? Like, he's a big guy. Dude, go stand next to Jay Sean Barham. Talk about a guy that looks good in the number 1 jersey. That guy looks like he was built in a lab. And when you watch him on the football field, the way he plays, and look, people that are old school might not like this. I don't give a shit. He likes the after the whistle extracurricular type stuff. The play is over. Jay Sean Barham's still in there barking. He's still in there throwing a shoulder. He's in there in somebody's face and shoving people. I love guys like that on the defensive side of the ball. Hell, I love guys like that on either side of the ball, but I would love to see Jay Sean Barham really take a big step forward and play a much bigger role on that Michigan defense this year. So that's something I'm going to keep my eye on. Is there anything else that you feel that we missed in terms of what you're going to be looking for in the spring game tomorrow?
I mean, not really. Obviously, I think everybody's wants to see how the true freshmen look like. I know I hit on like Andrew Marsh and Bryce Underwood and Jamar Browder, but you got guys like Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng at linebacker.
Yeah.
There was some analysts that compared him to Jay Sean Barham, like a smaller version of Barham. So if he could turn out to be like that in a couple years, like, you're going to have another guy just like Barham on the team. So guys like that, Shamari Earls, I want to see what these true freshmen, early enrollees look like.
Gotcha. Yeah. So again, spring game tomorrow in the big house at noon. Unfortunately, if you're not going to be there, you're not going to be able to see it. They are not going to air that game live. You'll be able to see the game, I believe, on BTN a handful of days later. And we'll make sure that we get that information out to you so you know how to tune in. But to CJ's question earlier, I will be down on the field. I'll be taking photos and video, and I'll try to get all that content out to you guys. And so before we hop off the show here, just a couple of quick things that have happened since we were last on the show. Trent, the transfer portal, you mentioned it earlier in the show. Benjamin Hall hits the portal. That's the biggest loss so far, I would say, that Michigan has had, at least for the spring session. Other guys like Amarian Walker entered the portal as well, but they really haven't had any significant losses. I guess outside of Benjamin Hall, who is figuring to be RB3 this year and maybe not maybe, that's probably primarily what played a role in him choosing to find a better opportunity elsewhere. But I guess, how concerned are you, given how chaotic things are? We're all assuming that the guys that are here are going to be here, and we're sort of looking at this roster based on the pieces that are here. How concerned are you about it's a crazy world, and we know that tampering's happening, conversations are happening, these players have representation now, and you've got collectives and teams out there that are willing to throw millions of dollars to get them to have a change of heart. How concerned are you that Michigan is going to lose a guy that we're factoring in as a major contributor before this spring window closes?
I mean, there's going to be more losses. Who, I don't know, but Michigan's going to have to get down in numbers, and guys are going to leave for better opportunities. With that being said, I don't think Michigan's going to lose some big impact type player. Honestly, when it's all said and done, I think Benjamin Hall probably will be that player. I don't think Michigan's going to have a Keon Sabb leave this year. Like, I don't think they're going to have that guy who is supposed to start or become a star at Michigan. I don't think they're going to have that in play this year. I will say, though, if Justice Haynes wouldn't have come to Michigan, I think Benjamin Hall would have been really good here. But obviously they got Haynes, and Jordan Marshall is going to play a ton. So Benjamin Hall just kind of saw the writing on the wall there.
I mean, that's the nature of the beast, right? You go out and you get a great guy out of the portal, a guy that you think is going to play a lot, and it's probably going to cost you somewhere else on the roster. And Trent, I mean, if that's the case, and Benjamin Hall is the biggest loss, and this is no knock to Benjamin Hall at all, because we both agree that we think he could have been great at the University of Michigan. But if that's the biggest loss they have in the spring transfer portal cycle, then I think Michigan's going to get out of this thing feeling pretty good. And Michigan picked up their first commitment out of the portal just today. They picked up the punter from Missouri. He was a 2-year starter out there. We know that Michigan needed to get a punter out of the portal. They got an experienced guy out of Missouri. Trent, I know that you're jacked about that. I'm surprised you didn't mention him as a guy. Will we see him tomorrow? Is he in Ann Arbor already?
Luke Bauer from Missouri. Did you know he was a 2020 recruit, and he still has 2 years of eligibility left?
Oh my God.
2020 recruit.
I just, dude, we are, if we're not careful, pretty soon, 10 years from now, college football will consist of guys in their late 20s, on $8 million contracts, playing college football for 7 or 8 years. I mean, that's where it's headed. It's basically NFL light. The NCAA is going to be gone. It's going to be just sort of this, pro-am league and exchanging guys here. Maybe we'll see NFL guys who aren't panning out be able to transfer down to Michigan and get a couple years in instead of going to some other league. I mean, are we headed there?
Guys who leave after 3 years comes back to finish out their eligibility.
He's still got 2 years left. He played with the Cowboys last year. It's a great pickup for the Michigan Wolverines.
Jamarcus Russell comes back to school for one more season.
Look, we laugh about it now, Trent, but at this trajectory, we're headed there. Like it's not that far off. So yeah, so far Benjamin Hall, that's the biggest loss. And hopefully if Michigan can keep it that way, I think they're going to get out of this thing looking pretty good. The last thing I want to ask you about before we get out of here, as we're approaching 43 minutes, I said it was going to be half an hour. Clearly I lied. Michigan, the recruiting trail, 2026 class. I asked this on Facebook. People thought, calm down, relax. I'm just asking the question. Is it too early as we sit here in the month of April, not to panic, but to raise your eyebrow a little bit at Michigan's recruiting class for the 2026 class? And just for some context here, that Michigan class is currently sitting outside the top 50 nationally at number 57 the last time I looked, which was like a couple days ago. Not only are they number 57 nationally, but they're 16th in the Big Ten. The only two teams that have a lower rated class than Michigan right now for 2026 is Northwestern and Indiana. Michigan right now has just 3 commitments in the class. Obviously, they missed out on 5-star Jackson Cantwell. It seemed like Michigan was going to be in the hunt there. So that's another big target off the board. Trent, I guess, how concerned are you with the lack of momentum we're seeing in the 2026 class at this point?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying I feel like we're always in this boat, right? Like, I feel like Michigan's always slow out of the gates, getting guys to come in. Like, look at last season, how they finished with landing Bryce Underwood. But I think that's kind of the point of it, though. Like, you got Bryce Underwood, you got Ty Haywood, you got Andrew Babalola, and they're not going off of that. You have 3 guys right now. The last commitment that Michigan had was Bear McWhorter back in February. Like, they haven't had a guy commit to Michigan since February. And Michigan's getting a ton of visits right now from some really good prospects, but they got to close the deal, right? You got to get these guys to commit. And right now that hasn't happened. But even if they do commit, you got to get them to sign. You got to get them to go to National Signing Day, early signing day, and sign on the dotted line. But no, I think you're right. I think that you can say Michigan fans can kind of raise their eyebrows a little bit. Like, why aren't they doing more than what they're doing after landing a guy like Bryce Underwood?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what it is, right? Like, if Michigan only had 5 or 6 commitments in the class right now, I don't think anybody really thinks too much of it. But you even mentioned who's the guy that you think could potentially is like on flip alert at this point? He's still continuing. He's one of 3 commitments that Michigan currently has, and he's taken a lot of visits.
Yeah, four-star cornerback Brody Jennings. He actually just set up an official visit with Florida today. So he's definitely looking around. I mean, he likes Michigan, but he's looking at other schools too.
Yeah, he was in Ann Arbor recently. I saw him take a picture with Will Johnson. And it's always good to have Will Johnson helping recruit a guy who's a projected first-round pick. 4 projected first-round picks for the Wolverines in the draft coming up here in about a week. Yeah, man, I'm not going to panic, but I am raising my eyebrow about it. I'm looking at Ohio State not struggling on the recruiting trail, Penn State not struggling on the recruiting trail, Oregon not struggling on the recruiting trail. But you're right. This seems to be a pattern for Michigan. They sort of get off slow start, outside of having McCarthy committed. I think he was committed for 2 years, right? And then they tend to finish strong. So I'm not panicking yet. It's only April. And yeah, I mean, even if a guy commits to you in April, there's no guarantee that he's going to be signing with you in December or February or whatever signing day it is. So I would just like to see some more momentum happening. I mean, this Michigan football program, it seems like they are primed for a big bounce back season. And maybe that is playing a role in it, right? Michigan goes 8-5 last year. They had a really strong finish to the year. You beat Ohio State, you beat Alabama. You land Bryce Underwood, you bring in a new offensive coordinator. Maybe commitments just want to sit back and see what things look like before they're, you might like Michigan. You might think Michigan is the way to go, but you want to sit back and see what this thing looks like before you're ready to commit. I'm all for that. But you don't want to see Michigan sitting at number 57 nationally in the recruiting rankings at any point in time. And so it would be nice. You said what? The last commitment came in February?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a minute, right? It's been a minute. We would like to see Michigan get, a nice commitment here in the coming weeks. And maybe there's going to be a lot of visitors at the spring game. A lot of high profile guys are going to be checking out the Wolverines. Maybe this is the weekend where what they see in Ann Arbor and in the big house is going to be enough to, to get them to make that decision. So, Trent, we're here at approaching 47 minutes. Certainly appreciate you hopping on. Trent and I and our partner Jared, we are going to be back in the big house tomorrow. We will give you, Trent's going to be taking pictures from the press box on his phone. He's going to be letting you know what things look like, giving you all kinds of intel. I'll be down on the field.
I'll have updates. Follow me on Twitter. I'll have updates.
There you go. Follow him on Twitter. He'll be giving you the updates. I'll be down on the field trying to get some good photos and some good video that we can get on the Facebook page as well. But until then, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to do a post-game thing. I don't know when Trent and I are going to hop on. But at some point here in the near future, Trent and I are going to hop on and discuss what we saw at the spring game. And hopefully you guys will join us then. So until then, really appreciate all you guys hopping in, Jacob and Ralph and Lydia and CJ and all you guys, man. It's always great to get with you and have you on the show. And we will speak to you soon. Take care, everybody.